So good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session on how to create a measurable problem statement. My name is Katie Lebetz. I am the president and CEO of Learning to Lean. I am a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt and Certified Project Management Professional. I'm also an emotional intelligence coach. I am also an author. I've written 3 books that are available on Amazon, and I have over 20 years of experience in lean, continuous improvement, leadership, and coaching. And I'm so honored to be your host today. So let's jump right into the content and let's talk about what is a problem. So before we can write a measurable problem statement, we have to understand what is a problem. So a problem is a gap between an actual and target condition or an unfulfilled customer need. Now, what's the gap between an actual and target condition? I want you to think of your metrics, right? So if you have metrics that you have a gap, so typically a gap on your metrics would show up as red or yellow, right? That's the gap between the actual and target condition. So obviously that's a problem we need to take action upon, or an unfulfilled customer need. And we always know what those are for the most part. Sometimes we have customers that grumble and we don't really know what's going on. But keep in mind that an unfulfilled customer need can be internally our internal customers within our organization or our external customers. So it can be one way or the other. So there are 2 questions that I want you to remember from today's discussion. The first question is, what problem are you trying to solve? And the second question is, what data do you have to support the problem? So those are 2 important questions to keep in mind as we're creating a measurable problem statement. So again, what problem are you trying to solve? And what data do you have to support the problem? So how do we communicate these problems within our organizations? How do we communicate when we have a gap between an actual and target condition or an unfulfilled customer need? Well, many times I hear people say, we just communicate verbally, right? We communicate over email. Sometimes I hear we communicate using Teams or chat or Jabber, or we communicate problems in a system. So like a ticketing system, if you think of IT. Now, each way that we communicate, or those methods in which I just talked about communicating, those can have challenges, right? So we know verbally when we communicate, it can be like the telephone game. And we're familiar with that as kids, right? Somebody said something at the beginning of the circle, and it is completely different by the time we get to the end of the circle. Sometimes when we communicate over email or text or in a system, right, we lose that emotional connection to it, or it is riddled with the opportunity for our ability to misinterpret the intent. So how can we better communicate to understand our problems and uncover root cause or causes to permanently solve our problem? So how can we better understand those problems and how can we get to root cause so those problems never come back again? Excuse me, we do that by asking the right questions. Now, what questions would you ask if somebody comes to you with a problem? And we all face problems on a day-to-day basis, right? There could be simple problems or more complex problems. You know, a simple problem is, hey, we're out of milk. A more complex problem is, we just had a breach from a cybersecurity standpoint, right? And we face all of these personally and professionally each day. So let's look at some questions that you could ask. So the first question I want you to ask is, what problem are you trying to solve? Describe the problem, not the solution. And for many of us, if we think about this, we are describing the solution all of the time. And we want people to describe the problem. So tell me what's happening. And we're going to go through some more questions. Describe the problem. Now, keep in mind, if somebody's coming up to you at work or maybe even at home, a large percentage of what they are expressing to you is how that problem is making them feel, right? They're not necessarily telling you what the problem is. They are describing to you how that problem is making them feel. So we need to ask questions like, what problem are you trying to solve? When I worked in IT and I spent many years in IT, the number one request I think we got or received was, we need a new database to like solve world hunger, right? It was always something like that. We need a new system to do this. We need a new database to do this. We need a new something. But that didn't tell me the problem that they were trying to solve. They had already fast forward or jump forward to the solution. So we're trying to make people just take a step back and express the problem that they're trying to solve. The next question I'd like you to ask is, who is the problem impacting? Is it one person or is it multiple people? If it's multiple people, what do they all have in common? Right? Do they work in the same department? Do they work on the same shift? What do these people have in common? Right? Where are they? What access do they have to a system? Right? So the first question is, what problem are we trying to solve? And the second question is, who is the problem impacting? Then I want you to ask, where is this process happening? So the location, the environment, etc. I had a customer that their group of folks came in and said, we no longer want to use these tablets to do our receiving. We want to go back to paper. And they had had the paper process forever, as you can imagine. And they just switched to tablets about a week prior to this discussion. And they said, we want to switch back to tablets. Well, or back to paper. As you can imagine, that's already violating our first question. So they're telling us the solution, but not the problem. So we started asking questions like, what problem are you trying to solve? The tablets aren't working. Okay, who's the problem impacting? One person or multiple people? Everybody, all the forklift drivers it's impacting. Then we said, where is this process happening? And they said, it is happening in the receiving docks and in the warehouse. Okay, so they gave us that explanation. We said, how long has the problem been happening? Which is our next question. The days, weeks, months, centuries. Well, for them, it just happened when they transitioned from paper to using the tablets. So we understood that it has been happening. The problem that they were trying to solve was they're having problems with receiving, right? It had been happening for as long as they had their tablets, so about a week, right? It was happening in the warehouse location and the receiving docks. And then we asked, how does this impact quality, cost, speed, delivery, or people? And they said, it takes us forever to receive in the product now. Once we get our product loaded on our forklifts at the receiving dock, then we have to drive halfway into the building to actually receive on those tablets. So they said it's taking us extra time because when we go to put stuff away, not everything involves going in that direction to get halfway in the building. Sometimes we just have to go down an aisle that's quick and close to the receiving dock, right? It costs us money when we have to travel further. There's opportunities for errors, right? As you can imagine, this company was moving wood, lumber. And as you can imagine, I don't want to drive a forklift with lumber on it. And, there's opportunities for that to tip over. There's a safety opportunity there. We could have somebody get hurt if we are, hurrying, trying to drive into the middle of a warehouse so that we can receive on a tablet. So again, that question was, how does this problem impact quality, cost, speed, delivery, or people? And then what data do you have to support the problem? So the data that they had really was that they were unable to receive on the tablets at the shipping dock or at the receiving dock. Now, when we talk about data, we are being very specific. There are two different types of data types that we're talking about, quantitative and qualitative. We want quantitative data, right? Think quantity. Data we can do math with, right? So there's 4 tires on a car, there's 6 marbles. A system has 99% uptime, right? So they told us, all 12 of the forklift drivers are having this problem, right? And this data could be continuous or discrete. Qualitative data is quality of something. So that's non-numerical. It's like saying the system is slow, the product is fine, right? Many times qualitative data, the quality of something is how it's making us feel, right? This new process is really frustrating. That is qualitative. That's not quantitative, right? They are saying we have to go halfway into the building, into the warehouse to receive our products on the tablets. Okay, how long does it take you to do that? From the receiving door to go halfway into the building, how long? So we could measure that in feet. It wasn't measured in miles because their facility wasn't that big, but in some facilities it could be miles, right? And it measured in feet and measured in time. So I would refer you to a spaghetti diagram to look at that. So, and they had 12 or 14 forklift drivers that are experiencing this. So when we want to talk about data, we want to talk about quantitative or quantity of something. So as Dr. Deming said, our quality guru, in God we trust, all others must bring data. So we need data. We need our data to create a measurable problem statement. So that's what we are coaching people on, is how to create a measurable problem statement. Now, you may be wondering, what happened with that situation with the forklift driver? So we asked them all those questions, and we realized after asking those questions that it was a simple solution to the problem. The problem was, obviously, as we've already discussed, answered all those questions. The root cause of this problem was that they needed another access point for their Wi-Fi in the middle of the building, right? It's an old building. It's got lots of crevices and metal and cement and things like that. So they just needed another access point. The access point at the receiving dock wasn't working properly and didn't have enough bandwidth, right, or reach to allow them to be able to receive in the product. So by adding another access point, we help to solve the problem. But we did need to ask those questions. Now, creating a measurable problem statement. Why do we need to do that? Who cares about measures? Can't we just express the way we always have? Well, we need to create a measurable problem statement to establish our baseline, or where we're starting. This allows us to understand if we make changes, if we've made things better or worse, because guess what? We can make them worse. So unless we know what our baseline is, we have no idea if we're making things better or worse. So that's why we need to have those measures. So where do we use a measurable problem statement? I use a measurable problem statement to coach people to complete a project charter. So if you are not utilizing a project charter for your Six Sigma projects or for any of your other projects that maybe follow a methodology, or maybe you don't, I really suggest that you contemplate or consider using a project charter. It is a one-page, typically, advertisement, the best advertisement you can have in regards to what is going on with the current situation and what problem are we trying to solve. I use a measurable problem statement for the foundation of a kaizen event. So in order to do a kaizen event, I coach and work with my customers to create a measurable problem statement so we know exactly what problem we are trying to solve when we come into the event. You also use a measurable problem statement in the define phase of your Lean Six Sigma DMAIC or DMADV project. Now, if you're not familiar, DMAIC projects are used, or DMAIC type is used when we have a current process that is broken. A DMADV is used when we have to create a brand new process because one does not currently exist. So that's where we use a measurable problem statement. So how do you do this? This is the recipe that I created many years ago. As I was teaching and coaching folks to create a measurable problem statement, they said, it would be really helpful if we had a recipe. So we are going to walk through each of these bullet points on the recipe to create a measurable problem statement, which again, we could use and retrofit that into our project charter documentation. I require it for a kaizen event, and it would be used in, for example, a Six Sigma DMAIC or DMADV. Our measurable problem statement is structured like this. What is happening or has happened? So describe what is happening or has happened. And again, I'll go through each of these bullet points here in a moment. What is the target goal, metric, or behavior? What is the impact to the company, team, group, or what's the problem causing? Why the problem should be solved. Remember, we don't want any emotions and we don't want any solutions. Your problem statement is not the place for a solution. And what's the scope of the problem you're trying to solve? So let's look at each one of those bullet points independently. So the first question I noted on the recipe is, what is happening? This is your opportunity to tell the story about your problem. You want people to read your problem statement, your measurable problem statement, sit up in their chair and wonder, how have we not solved this problem before? That's the type of impact that we want to have. Now, I realize not every project is exciting and sexy that way, but we do want people to sit up and take notice. So what is happening? Again, we don't want to include the solution. So my example of we need a new database to, or we need a new system to, that's a solution. We don't want to include that at this point. We use root cause analysis or the phases in DMAIC or DMADV or the kaizen event to come up with our actual solution. So that's not part of our problem statement. We want to use our data in this area, right? So we want to use our data throughout the measurable problem statement, but we particularly want to use our data in this area. And again, we want quantitative data or data we can do math with. So let's take a look at a couple examples. So what's happening? Over the first 6 months of 2025, we've seen an increase in inventory from $1 million to $5 million. Whoa, that will definitely make you take notice, right? Again, these are just examples. During Q1 and Q2 of 2025, we had 20 recorded safety incidents in the shipping and receiving area. Wow, that's pretty significant, right? So we have 20 recorded safety incidents. That will make you look up from your phone and pay attention. Another example, from January 1st of 2024 to 2025, we observed a 30% increase in our processing time for new recruiters. So again, all of these very simple statements, they're not super wordy. We have our data and we have presented it in a manner in which we are describing what is happening. Now, the next bullet point is, what is the target or goal? So that should directly be linked to your problem statement. So our goal should link to what our problem statement is. So and I'll give you an example here in a moment. It should be measurable with quantity and time. Now, sometimes people have absolutely no idea what their goal should be. So they ask me, do you have a standard? A typical, quote unquote, typical Lean Six Sigma goal would be an 80% improvement over current state. So I always tell people, start there and work from there, right? If 80%, if you feel 80% is just completely unimaginable, then what do you think is realistic? Now, keep in mind, when you are creating your measurable problem statement, you might not know that yet. So you might have to do more information or gather more information. So at that point, you can leave target and goal as just an X as a placeholder. The project problem statement and goals should directly relate to your organizational goals. So ultimately, that is something that you need to discuss as an organization. Are the problems that you're trying to solve and the projects you're working on, do they directly relate to your organizational goals? So here's some examples. The project team will work to reduce the percentage of delayed monthly credit card accounts from 16 to 2% by November 2025. Very good. I like that time fence in there too. See where it says 16 to 2% by November 2025? It means that we are not having a situation of a never-ending story. The goal of this project is to decrease the proportion of telephone customers who are on hold more than 4 minutes from 12 to 6% by 12/1/2025 without increasing headcount. Great. That is fantastic. Now, some people, it is more relatable for them to refer back to SMART goals. Now, some people have been trained on SMART goals and some people have not. So SMART goals stand for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So if that helps you to write your goal statement, just refer back to your previous experience with SMART goals. The next bullet point is impact to the company, or what is this problem causing? So what is this problem doing to you, doing to your people, doing to your customers, right? Examples: delay in shipments from the customers. So that's an impact to on-time delivery. You could include your metric, right? For 2024, our on-time delivery metric was 99%. And currently in 2025, our on-time delivery metric is 93%. People are going to take notice if you have any changes in that. The problem could be causing loss of market share. So you want to include the previous market share and current. It could be causing customer dissatisfaction. So maybe you do a net promoter score and that you notice that this problem is causing a lower net promoter score. Or a safety issue, like I noted in a previous example, then you're going to write down or document the number of occurrences or an example. If you're self-insured, you can get workman's comp numbers. This problem could cause you an inability to do X, meaning something, right? Or additional cost to the company. So you want to include those numbers that this is impacting. And then we want to list out why the problem should be solved. So my interpretation of that bullet point is, what bad things will happen if we don't solve this problem? Maybe it's additional overtime, and additional overtime that wasn't included in the budget will get you noticed. Additional headcount. Again, additional headcount that wasn't included in the budget will get your project noticed. Maybe it's an unsatisfactory report to Wall Street, right? For some of the organizations that are publicly traded, we need to be aware of that. Maybe it's a recall, right? Nobody wants to have a recall. That would be a bad thing that could happen, that people will pay attention to you. Or in your project, a failure or inability to obtain a patent or renew a patent. Could be lawsuits, could be food contamination. So there's something bad that will happen if we don't solve this problem. And what is that bad thing? Now, again, bad is, as I listed, right, it is a quality of something, not a quantity of something. So you have to put some numbers that are associated with this. And that will help you write your statement. And then what is the project scope? So project scope, I always tell people, it is the line in the sand, right? Project scope is saying or telling you the boundaries of a project or a kaizen event. This is where it will start and end in relation to the process, or start and end in relation to time or physical space, physical process. Why do I need to know that? Well, I need to know that especially for a kaizen event when I go to do SIPOC, when we go to do the value stream map, we need to know the scope of this problem in the project we're trying to solve, right? So we need to know that it's, from the moment that we get the customer order until the moment we give the customer their PO acknowledgement. Okay. Because if you don't define this ahead of time, you're going to waste time and resources sitting and spinning, having discussions about it. Your kaizen event could go completely off the rails if you don't have this scope defined. Sometimes we like to list it as what this project or kaizen event will and won't do. So you'll have a section that'll say in scope and out of scope. So as I work with customers, I always ask them, what is on the table or off the table when it comes to this project or problem? And that's the same way of facilitating or asking that question, what it will and won't do. Now, sometimes out of scope would be an IT solution. Sometimes out of scope would mean a large capital investment over a certain dollar amount. And sometimes I go to companies and they say nothing's off the table for this. Once you have established the scope, whatever solution we come up with will be one that we will investigate, which is fantastic. Now, if you want to learn more about scope, you can always stop and take one of our project management classes where we go into greater detail about scope. So let's look at some examples of measurable problem statements. So this is written in the manner in which I have presented it on the left side. So here's an example. Currently, the employee turnover is 18%. The target is the company KPI target for turnover in 2025 is 10% or less. What is the impact? The increased employee turnover is causing 20 additional hours each week for HR and recruiting and decreased employee morale based on the company employee net promoter score from Q3 of 2024. So why should we solve this problem? Given this situation, HR and recruiting will not be able to maintain the additional hours without hiring at least 1 to 2 additional team members that were not included in the forecast. The scope is turnover limited to those people who have quit or been fired, not those that retired. Right? So again, here is an example. It is a realistic example to be able to include for a project right now. I have many companies that are having a turnover problem. So as we have turnover issues, that requires many more resources, not from HR, but just HR, but also all departments. So those are things that we have to take into consideration and action that needs to be taken. Here is the supply chain one. During Q1 and Q2 of 2025, the supply chain group observed a price increase from 3 to 7% from their top 3 suppliers. The target, though, for supply chain was to reduce the overall spending with the top 3 suppliers by at least 10%. The increased prices have resulted in a $1 million increase with their spending with the top 3 suppliers. Why should we solve this problem? Well, with the increased cost, we can no longer be competitive in the accessory product division. We've lost 80% of our customers due to the price increase that we'd had to realize in our final products. Scope, accessory product division only. So again, I know that I give you examples and it looks like I teed them up so that they look very clean and that they follow the recipe. But when I originally got these requests for solving these problems, they didn't look that clean, right? So it takes time to be able to work through each of those bullet points and each of those steps to be able to have an end result like that. Okay, so we are going to play Rate That Problem Statement. So if you are participating in today's class, if you want to use your thumb up or thumb down emoji, or you can put it in chat. So I'm going to give you some examples. These are real life examples that have been changed to protect the guilty or the innocent. We'll go ahead and show you some real life examples because You just can't make these things up. Our hospital has a problem with the number of insurance claim forms submitted with errors to the insurance company. This causes a significant delay in processing the claims. Do you think that this problem statement follows this format? Thumbs up if you think it does, or a thumbs down if you think it does not. Thumbs down, absolutely, right? We are missing so many things. And I hope when you read this that things jump out at you, like our hospital has a problem with the number of insurance claim forms submitted with errors. Well, how many insurance claim forms are submitted to begin with? How many are submitted with errors? How much is a significant delay? Again, that is a quality, not a quantity. What is significant? So for me, significant delay could be a day. And other people would say, oh no, a significant delay is like 7 days. We need to have numbers at a minimum associated with this and go back and fill out the rest of the bullet points. Okay, insurance claim forms originated at the Fremont North Memorial Emergency Department are causing a loss of revenue, excessive rework costs, and delayed payments to the hospital. 45% of the claim forms have errors with an average of 2.3 defects per form. This problem existed since claims processing was moved to Kansas City in March of 2012. It's been a long time. Billings could increase by $3.5 million per month. Rework costs could be reduced by 50%. An additional 1.3% of revenue could be recovered if errors were occurring less than 5% of the time. Achieving this level of performance would increase profits by $395,000 per year. So yes, I saw David had a thumbs up. Absolutely not bad. It has a lot of information, so be leery of too much information. I would just like it restructured to be a little bit more clear. So loss of revenue, do they talk about revenue in there? Yes. Do they talk about what the loss was? Not exactly. Rework costs, they said it's billings could increase 3.5 million per month. Rework costs be reduced by 50%. But what are they now? And what are the rework costs? So again, not bad, great foundation. Let's just clean it up a little bit and move on. Inventory levels at the facility in Detroit are too high and must be reduced because of having too few forklifts. This has been going on for a long time. If the inventory levels are at the right amount, we'd be able to get more gain sharing or profit sharing at the end of the quarter. We hope to have this fixed before December 2025. Yes, I agree with David. Yeah. Inventory levels, they're too high. Okay, so are they too physically high? Or do we have too much inventory? So many questions to go along with that. And one of the things sometimes you'll hear is people will say, we don't have the data for that. Okay, so some circumstances, they don't. If you didn't put it into a system, then you probably can't get it out of a system if it's not in a system to begin with. Do I ever have to rely on some manual data capture? Absolutely. Not the most effective and efficient way to do it, but if it truly is a problem that we have to solve, we do have to do some manual data capture. We currently receive 120 packages per day at the shipping and receiving. There are 2 people that work in the area, both on first shift. We want to reduce the amount of overtime for these 2 individuals by 20% by the end of 2025. So we got one thumbs up. It is okay for a foundation. Again, we're missing some information, right? So they want to reduce the amount of overtime. How much overtime are they doing, right? So we want to know that. So we have the target and goal. They told us what is happening, but again, we need to know how much overtime are they working? What's the impact to the company? Why should we solve this problem, right? And the scope. Are you saying only shipping, receiving? You need to be crystal clear when it comes to that. So 3 key takeaways for effective problem statements. Number 1, ask the right questions. Number 2, ensure you have measurable data. And number 3, follow the measurable problem statement recipe. So, what questions do you have for me? If you want to download a free measurable problem statement recipe form here, you can scan the QR code there and download that form. So that form is just a little table with all of the bullet points from the measurable problem statement recipe that we looked at. We offer free classes once a month. So please check out our website, www.learningtolean.training. And you can see all of our free offerings that we have scheduled until the end of the year. And if there is anything that we can do to help you be successful, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thanks. Have a great day.